Hello, and welcome back to It's a Very Exciting Time, a podcast by a UFO nerd and his tolerant friend. My name is Scott, and I've been fascinated by the phenomenon my whole life.
And I'm Chuck. I'm an aerospace nerd and a tolerant friend.
We started this podcast because since 2017, there have been shocking revelations, from news of secret Pentagon programs to confirmed videos of astonishing craft. In a nutshell, now that we know the government has recovered non-human technology,
Or at least we will, now that Dr. Phil is on the case.
it raises a natural question. If UFOs are real, what else? Suddenly, some of these other parts of the phenomenon that seemed unlikely are pulled into the realm of the possible.
And they may still be unlikely, but even if it's new science and not aliens...
Ooh, it's a very exciting time.
Oh, man. So, Scott, do you want to talk about some of the changes we made with the podcast?
Yeah. So I'm recording with a different camera, and we unchecked the box that says reduce background noise. So if all has gone well, you just heard me say woo. And if all has gone well, you are not hearing a lot of annoying background noise like
Right.
fans and cats meowing and Chuck's dog panting into the microphone.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
The only bad part is that our video is still freezing, and we
Yeah,
don't
I have
know
no
why that's
idea.
happening. So apparently, we thought that was just a local thing, but Scott said that did make it to YouTube. So
Yeah.
apologies if that does.
Anyway, Chuck, we got to get going because, buddy,
All right.
I've got so much stuff to talk about this week.
Yeah. Bring it
So-
on.
The big thing this week is we got a new interview with our good boy, David Grusch, which, as you saw in the intro notes, is with, of all people, Dr. Phil.
Yeah, that's
Very strange.
surprising. I didn't know Dr. Phil was still doing things, but
He is, like all the right-wing people, he's got a podcast.
okay.
What's interesting is the fourth batch of UFO files were sent directly to Dr. Phil. So
What?
you remember the first batch? There was that right-wing journalist who was like,
Yeah.
they brought me a hard drive in the middle of the night and left it on my desk. We're like, is this really how the White House delivers files?
It's so weird.
Anyway, apparently they did the same thing to Dr.
Still
Phil for
doing
the
it.
fourth batch. They gave them to him, a little bit early. And the word is that Trump included a handwritten note that says, have fun with this. And
Oh,
Dr. Phil has been having fun. Now, when I told this to Annie, she got real mad. She's like, and I was trying to pin her down on why she's upset. And basically, I think it was just she doesn't want to ever think about Dr. Phil, which, fair.
yeah, fair.
But I will say this for Dr. Phil. For someone who is speed running getting involved in the UFO topic, he's hitting all the right notes. He's saying the right things.
Okay.
He's learning the right things. He's a little off, as you'd expect for someone who's pretty new to it. But as you'll see in the interview with David Grusch, he asks some pretty good questions.
Nice. Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to hand wave it away. Listening to Dr. Phil is right up there on par with listening to Joe Rogan. It's not my favorite thing, but it was a great interview. And I'm going to quote all the best bits to you so you don't have to listen to Dr. Phil.
All right. It's like Annie,
Yeah.
so you don't have to listen.
That's
Anyways,
right.
Carry on.
But before we get to our good boy, I've
Okay.
got I've got one other thing, which
Okay.
I actually debated about including at all. Here's the thing. This story I'm about to tell you basically boils down to somebody met with Trump and said some things to him.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
What do I do with that? Right? Like, it
Interesting
doesn't
context.
mean anything.
yeah.
But the person that we're talking about is Robert Bigelow, who is the founder of Bigelow Aerospace. He was the primary contractor for the OSAP program back in the day. He's a former owner of Skinwalker Ranch. He's heavily
Pretty important
involved
dude.
in all this stuff. We've talked about him a lot on the show. So the idea that he met with President Trump explicitly to talk about UFOs, among other things, is genuinely pretty interesting. So Robert Bigelow, apparently he was going to be interviewed by George Knapp. George Knapp, legendary Nevada journalist who's been on top of the UFO stuff since way back in the day. He's the one that broke Bob Lazar. He's got a series of interviews set up with Bigelow. And I guess Bigelow was like, let's record it at my place and make it a podcast. So we're in like Bigelow's office, which is like wood paneling, not wood paneling, like wood planks. Like it looks like a cabin. There's like an iron stove next to them. There's these weird like rustic lamps with like miniatures of like World War II trucks. There's a big framed painting of like a covered wagon coming over. Like, there's definitely a vibe in this room of like, I'm a guy who likes old things. But also off on the side of the room behind where George Knapp is sitting are 3 of those cheap like conference posters you get where they like unroll and clip, you know, like 5 feet tall, but all promoting like Bigelow Aerospace. It's like all old school stuff and also new school.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah.
They're both sitting in leather armchairs and they're maybe 10 feet apart. It's just funniest thing. It's not like there's a table between them. They just are really far apart for some reason. But it's like a professional setup, like good lighting, great cameras, great mics. I don't know, man. It was very funny to me.
That is weird. It's like they meant to have a fireside chat, but forgot the fire.
Yeah. So the conversation ranges pretty widely. For anybody who doesn't know, Bigelow was pretty hardcore into the UFO stuff during the OSAP program. And the rumor is that the story we've heard for years that Lockheed was going to transfer their crash retrieval materials back to the government, that was actually going to be transferred to Bigelow's company.
Right.
And they had built a warehouse for it and all that. So anyway, Bigelow was big involved in this. Lately, he is not so involved in the UFO stuff. He's been more involved in consciousness studies and life after death, which is also very much my jam. So I've been paying attention to that side of it. But where the UFO stuff comes in is, again, he's been very plugged in on this. So he doesn't really explain why, but he says, I was having a meeting with President Trump in February to cover these 7 papers that I wrote for him. These papers are, I don't know if they're classified or if he's just not allowed to talk about them, but one of them was about UFOs and non-human intelligence and disclosure.
Yeah.
We can assume if that was one of the topics, one of the other topics was probably consciousness and life after death. What are the other 5? I'm dying to know, but he did not tell us. Also, just to put a pin in this up front, we never hear anything about how President Trump reacted or took anything Bigelow said.
Yeah, sure.
Knapp asks him, and he's like, I'm not comfortable talking about that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's actually...
But basically, he says, you know, I had like 11 minutes per paper, and I'm trying to give him this high level thing. So this is a quote from Robert Bigelow. He says, I was emphasizing that the disclosure process, starting with confirmation, is a big deal. You know, that really is important for somebody like the President of the United States to say, yeah, they're real, they're here, and eliminate all the other nonsense, all the noise that's been going on for 80 years. And then he describes how he wants the president to do this. He says, I don't want you to make a big speech. He says, I want you, he says, I've written a like 1-sentence thing for you.
Yeah.
He's like, I want you like one day as you're boarding Air Force One to turn around and be like, oh, by the way, which is a wild way to do this.
Yeah.
But here is the thing that he wrote. He said, and this is what I want you to say, Mr. President, quote, a non-human intelligent presence has been on Earth for a very long time, using spacecraft and with performance capabilities completely beyond our capabilities and our human physics. And that's it. Say nothing else. That's it. That's all. Because what this is actually confirmation.
Sure. But why does he want to limit it to only that is my question.
He didn't talk a whole lot about the why. He did mention a few times not wanting to overwhelm Trump. So, for example, he did not get into any of the weird shit at Skinwalker with like hitchhiker phenomenon and poltergeists and stuff. He's like, stick to the basics, the visitors and the gatekeepers and, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't understand why he wanted the president to just make this a casual announcement. That is a wild decision to me. I do understand his broader point about, we've been talking a lot about disclosure, but if there's one thing that we need sooner, it's confirmation. The disclosure will naturally follow confirmation. Sure. The instant you confirm, boy, are people going to have a lot of questions that lead to disclosure. But right now, we've moved beyond the deeply stigmatized era of the 80s and the 90s, where even talking about this stuff would get you laughed out of the room. But it's still not taken super seriously. You know, like even though we have quite a lot of progress being made and serious whistleblowers, this does not get mainstream attention.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's wrong, because we don't have that confirmation. We have a lot of tantalizing evidence that adds up to paint what I think is a pretty compelling picture, but we're not at the point yet where I can go to, you know, a group of people that I don't know very well and be like, so this is real. And they're not going to be like, well, that's Scott guy. I don't know if we invite him back next time.
I mean, it is true that even your co-host is still not completely convinced.
Side note, I was out for a walk the other day and I was wearing a shirt that I don't normally wear out in public for exactly this reason. It's my To the Stars Academy shirt that says in huge white letters, UFOs are real. And then in a little subtitle, it says, aliens fucking exist. So I'm walking down the street and this woman's walking towards me. We get to the point where, you know, like we make eye contact and acknowledge each other, just, you know, a polite nod. And I nod at her and she nods back, and with a little smile, she goes, Mulder.
Amazing. Man, only in Portland, I feel.
I thought that was a pretty good burn.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
All right, let's get to the meat of the day, Chuck. We're done talking about Robert Bigelow because I don't even know what to make of that story. Okay, Bigelow talked to Trump in February. Later, Trump went out and got serious about the UFO topic. Was that because of Bigelow, or was it unrelated? There's literally no way to know anything about this story. So,
well, and he hasn't done confirmation yet. So.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. He told him what to say, and he has not said that. So yeah, as I mentioned, Dr. Phil has done a couple of episodes of his podcast about UFO stuff. His first one was kind of a 101 overview when the fourth batch of UFO files dropped. So he was like, hey, why am I talking about UFO files? And kind of covering everything from a high level. And it was fine.
Okay.
You know, like nothing that would be news to any of us.
Yeah.
But now he's got an interview with David Grusch. That's really exciting to me. Grusch doesn't give as many interviews as he used to. And I was seeing a bunch of people quoting various bits of it. So I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch this. And I'm glad I did. There was not a ton of new information. There was a little bit of new information. And basically the impression that I'm getting is when Grusch first testified, he was very, very clear. I can talk about this. This is the stuff that's in my Dopser. This is the stuff I'm authorized to talk about. And I've noticed him getting just a little bit looser with what he's comfortable saying in public. And part of that, I think, is he's trying to put some pressure on the administration to like open up about it. Also, as we've covered before, he has since come out and originally what he said is he only received information like third hand via interviews and testimony. He has since said that he personally saw photos and videos. So admittedly, that's not firsthand. He wasn't at the crash site, but like he has actually seen photos of bodies, photos of craft, and talked to witnesses. So as we've talked about before, there's plenty of reason to find David Grusch a very credible witness.
Yeah.
And he's opening up a little more about that. So the first thing I want to quote here is just kind of a good recap of David Grusch and how he got to this and what he has seen. So he says, quote, "In terms of what my exposure was, I had folks from the retrieval program. I'll call it exfiltrate audiovisual evidence for me to see, both videos and photos. And that was audiovisual evidence of the recovered craft and some of the dead cadavers that were recovered. Side note, this is the first time Grusch has said bodies or cadavers or anything like that.
Yeah, it was always biologics.
Previously, he's
before,
used
right?
biologics, which might mean a piece, like, not to get gross, but like it doesn't necessarily mean like, yes, there's the body of a gray alien. Like, it could mean a lot of things. So this is, I believe, the first time he's explicitly said cadavers, bodies. So dead cadavers that were recovered, the pilots. And of course, I interviewed a ton of subjects all the way up to the cabinet White House level that had close personal participation in this subject. I brought a lot of those people to the intelligence community inspector general. That complaint was considered credible and urgent. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines was forced to send it to the Senate and House Intelligence Committees in summer of 2022. And then I subsequently provided 11 and a half hours of classified testimony to the Senate and House Intelligence Committees.
11 and a half hours. That's a heck of a party. I suppose that's over multiple briefings, but
you got to assume. And also that's the classified briefing, right? So we got, after that, the public version of that briefing. Right. And he was clear that he said more to Congress behind closed doors.
Yeah. The fact that he used the word exfiltrate is fascinating to me because I have a sneaking suspicion that whoever, NSA, I don't know, whoever does IT for the government is like kind of freaking out from that.
Yeah, for sure. So Grusch goes on a little bit talking about what happened after he talked to Congress. He says, unfortunately, from what I understand, there was a little bit of fear in those committees, especially in the Senate, and they did not open up a full field investigation. I think Mark Warner and Marco Rubio were a little nervous to really up the ante. And then, of course, the ICIG investigated it. And from what I understand, back-channeled to me unofficially, is Jake Sullivan in the White House General Counsel Office basically told Tom Monaghan, who is the Inspector General for the intelligence community under Biden, and his staff to stop. And they realized they were bumping into White House classified programs, something called special access programs, and eventually they were told to stop, from what I understand. I hope Secretary Rubio is helping Stephen Miller at the White House because I am hearing mixed messages about Stephen Miller's seriousness, and I hope he understands how this will impact President Trump's legacy if this is botched.
So, I knew about the ICIG, and is he saying here that that the ICIG like received his thing, started investigating, and then was told to stop? Is this before or after it went to the Senate?
That is unclear.
Okay.
I believe, based on what he says here, that's after.
Okay.
But it's hard to say because I believe the ICIG investigated and then reported to Congress. But the way he told the story here is Congress didn't act and then the ICIG investigated it. I don't know the answer.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting, the idea that what they were running into was a White House special access program. Now, again, we've talked about this before. The distinction between the White House, the executive branch, the military, the DOD is hazy at times. Technically, all of this is executive branch and the White House is at the top.
Right.
But, you know, does this mean this was a DOD program that they bumped into, or was this actually a program being run out of the White House with the president's knowledge? That's unclear. But the main takeaway here is Congress wasn't willing to dive full-throated into an investigation, and the ICIG was told to stop by the White House General Counsel office.
Yeah.
That's new details.
I mean, unsurprising, right? But it is interesting.
If it's real, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, here's something you'll appreciate. Grusch says, it's funny. I got tipped off initially. I got access to, I have to be careful because some of this is still classified. I got access to a peer adversary's intelligence report about what they thought was going on in the U.S.
Interesting.
And I learned more from that particular peer adversary about what the U.S. was doing in terms of retrieval and reverse engineering of UAP than I learned from my own government officially until I started spelunking in different archives, talking to people that were able to provide me program documentation, etc. And then I had an individual that cleared me into a program where I could learn some of the signatures that we've learned that these craft emit, how the U.S. tracks it, how they hide the tracking of UAP within the national intelligence architecture in plain sight, and that foreign intelligence reporting, the Defense Intelligence Agency, has refused to release those classified documents to Congress. And I know Representative Burleson is likely going to pulse DIA leadership to get that.
That is so interesting. You're absolutely right. I'm intrigued that, because foreign adversary stuff isn't going to be classified under the same SAPs, right? That's fascinating.
I mean, who knows? He does say that those documents are classified, so I doubt we're going to see them. But again, it gets back to Grusch's core claim, which is this shit is being illegally concealed from Congress, where Congress has an oversight mandate. They are bypassing that, even from the Gang of Eight. And there is process for things to be hidden from Congress at large, but the Gang of Eight is supposed to be ready on everything if they ask. They're not being. So there's a few things in this quote that I find fascinating. First of all, I knew you would love the idea that he learned more about the crash retrieval program from the foreign reporting, and then he was able to confirm it.
I want to know which adversary, though.
He mentioned specifically that he was cleared into a program. That's awesome. We have heard him say that before, that he was read into a program. But it's interesting now to hear that that was after he learned about these programs, which implies maybe he actually got access to one of the legacy programs. He specifically mentions signatures we've learned that these craft emit and how we track it. That ties into the Skywatcher stuff, right? They have said explicitly, and Elizondo has talked about this, that absolutely, we know how to detect them. We're using that to show up where we think they'll be. And then he says how they hide the tracking of the UAP within the national intelligence architecture in plain sight. That ties in to Matthew Brown's whole Immaculate Constellation claim that there is a umbrella program that hoovers all this stuff up and keeps people from unintentionally discovering it. So, he's not explicitly calling out Immaculate Constellation. He's not explicitly calling out Skywatcher. But, if you start pulling these threads together on our crazy red string board, this is starting to look more solid, and it kind of comes back to our good boy.
Yep, sure, always does.
Yeah, and of course, I love his final thing of Representative Burleson is probably going to ask about this. Oh, you think Representative Burleson, who hired David Grusch to tell him what questions to ask explicitly, might ask about this thing David Grusch wants him to ask about?
It's possible.
All right. So at this point, I'm going to start quoting from a Q&A section that Dr. Phil had, where it was, for a lot of the interview, it was a little more free-flowing. But then we got to this point where Dr. Phil clearly had a list of prepared questions. And to Dr. Phil's credit, these are good questions. These are the kind of questions we wanted Congress to ask when Grusch was testifying.
Nice.
Some of the questions did get asked, and he said he couldn't answer them, and Phil's either coming at them from a different angle or something, but these are good questions.
Cool.
First of all, Dr. Phil says, now you say you have seen and have evidence that there are craft that did not originate on this planet. are we talking about multiple craft? And Grusch says, yeah. Okay. Dr. Phil, are we talking 5, 6, 25, 50? What are we talking about? And Grusch kind of laughs. He says, under 100, but more than 25 is what I could say.
No, that's fascinating.
Pause here for a second. This echoes claims we've heard from multiple people that the U.S. has recovered a few dozen craft.
Sure.
So once again, kind of consistency across witnesses is one of the things that we're looking for. Nice to hear that coming in. Less than 100, more than 25. He says, that's what I can say. The exact numbers actually are a little nebulous because starting in the early 2000s, when a lot of money was siphoned for the global war on terror, the big defense contractors started doing their own retrievals sort of off the books under the cognizance of certain government agencies. Pause again. Yeah. That's another thing echoing what we have heard from other witnesses, including Jake Barber of Skywatcher. This claim that these private organizations are doing their own crash retrievals, more or less rogue. Depending on who you're talking to, either they are fully rogue, just doing their own and not reporting it, or they're doing it, but like they're only talking to this one intelligence agency and not everybody else. Anyway,
yeah, because didn't he talk about like getting into firefights with people?
Yeah. Barber's story about that stuff is wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, Grusch says big defense contractors started doing their own retrievals off the books under the cognizance of certain government agencies. So there's a lot in private possession in defense contractor space that I think the government does not have a full accounting of. So it's really hard to get exact numbers. But certainly we have recovered several dozen vehicles over the last 8 or 9 decades.
Huh. I don't know. I don't know how to react to that, but it's pretty awesome. And hearing that from Grusch is like kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Phil asks, do you know where some of these craft are? If we have more than 25, less than 100, do you know where some of these are being stored or researched as we sit here today? Great question, Dr. Phil. Thank you.
Seriously.
Grusch gives a great answer. He says, the problem with that is I knew where they were historically up until the date and time that my source at that facility worked on. And this is something I told an element of Stephen Miller's task force recently. Quick interjection. Stephen Miller's task force. We have heard there is a UAP task force under the White House that Avi Loeb's science group is reporting to.
Okay.
We don't know anything about that task force. We have heard that Stephen Miller is running point to some degree on the UAP issue out of the White House.
Okay.
This is the first time I've heard someone say Stephen Miller's task force, implying he's not just like the point person. He's actually running a task force out of the White House. So
have we talked about Stephen Miller very often? I don't recognize the name.
No, because what a horrible man. What a horrible man. Once again, if you have political complaints, our intern's email is dev-null@veryexcitingtime.com. He'll be happy to respond to you about politics.
Love you, Dev.
Love you, Dev. So yeah, this is an element Grusch says that he told Stephen Miller's task force recently is, quote, they're going to have to get eyes onto those facilities. There is a program protection strategy, unfortunately, to move movable archives and materials if they feel like the location has been burned or exposed.
Makes sense.
Up until a couple years ago, I was aware of U.S. government facilities and contractor facilities that both had the documentation and the material holdings in the cadavers. But certain things are hard to move.
Sure.
When they're of a particular size, it's a little bit laborious to move. So I think there's some locations that likely are untouched because I'll be very vague on that so as not to spook the herd.
Sure. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. There are things that are going to be really challenging to move.
But now this ties in. Yeah, go ahead.
They did get there originally. So,
So this ties into 2 interesting things. One, Representative Burleson who David Grusch works for, has been doing a tour of facilities in the U.S. with active White House support. You know, David Grusch is feeding him information on where to go.
Yeah, right.
What I find fascinating is multiple Congress people have talked about this idea of you can't coordinate a group of Congress people showing up somewhere without the information leaking. And if the information leaks, we're going to show up to an empty warehouse. Yep. So they're having to be very careful about when and where they show up and not tipping their hands about what all they know. Right. But at some point, you got to assume Burleson is going to call this bluff and show up some. So I find that fascinating. Yeah. Second, Ross Coulthart has been telling a story for a while now about a UFO that is too big to move. That was so big that they constructed a facility on top of it. And he's been very cagey about where this is. At this point, I believe he has confirmed it is not in the U.S. And I forget the exact phrase he used, but there is some sort of like facility on top that is like, God, I wish I could remember the term he used, but it implied that it was like a government facility or a public facility and not like a top secret thing. So you're kind of like hiding it by putting it out in public and nobody knows there's an enormous football-sized UFO in the basement.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that, I guess that alters what I said. So they didn't have to move all of these things. Cool.
Yeah, according to Coulthart, there's at least one of them they physically could not move, even if they found out the Congress people were coming.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's immovable or if it's too large to move secretly.
I think it's the second one. I don't think anything is too large to move. We've seen some crazy stuff being moved over the years, but are you going to be able to move it without everyone seeing like, holy cow, they dug up the side of that mountain?
Right, yeah. Or, I mean, if it's got exotic materials in it, what happens when you try and move it?
Yeah. And also, just so that people understand, the idea that something is buried in a mountain or something like that, there have been rumors floating around for years, I believe dating back to Bob Lazar, that at least one of the recovered craft was recovered in an archaeological context, like dug out of the ground, prehistorical kind of thing, not it's set down in a field somewhere and, government agents swooped in and loaded it into a truck. Like, this thing's been here for a minute.
Yeah, Stargate style.
Yeah. So getting back to the ships, Dr. Phil says, is there a homogeneity? Thank you, Chuck. Is there a homogeneity among these that suggests that they're all coming from the same place? Great question.
Yeah.
Are they similar? Are they different? And Grusch says, yeah, there's a lot of vehicle types. And then he just starts casually rattling them off. You've got the disc, you have the sunfish boot heel looking thing, you've got boomerangs, you have a crescent moon looking craft, you have tic tacs, you have egg looking craft as well. Certainly it's very hard to deduce origin because it's not like we know exactly what point in space or time these things came from.
Yeah, space or time. Why not?
Time?
Yeah.
Love you, David Grusch.
Right? I want to know about the sunfish boot heel thing. That's fascinating. Yeah. Weird shape.
There have been rumors for years that the craft that crashed in Roswell was not a flying saucer looking thing. It was like a manta ray looking thing. That's what I think when he says sunfish boot heel looking thing. It's kind of round in the front and flat in the back. And of course, the very first UFO report we have, the place we got the term flying saucers from. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot the guy's name. But anyway, the dude Lazar, in like, right? No, well before that, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, pilot, flying near Mount Rainier, saw a series of flying objects and reported them. and he described them as skipping along like saucers on the surface of water, but he said they were actually crescent shaped.
Oh, interesting.
But everybody heard flying saucers, and that's what stuck in popular consciousness. And then, ironically, there are disc-shaped ones as well. So it turned out to be a not inaccurate word, but didn't actually describe the craft that Kenneth Arnold saw.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Now, Grusch continues talking about how there's all these different kinds of things. He says there's different types of pilots and different types of craft, but some similarities in operation and technology. It's sort of like if you're a car manufacturer, a lot of people build sports cars that are in the shape of a Porsche 911 or a Ford Mustang, but there's many different drivers of said sports cars, if you get the course analogy. So it's a whole taxonomy of different intelligences from very familiar type of intelligence, where they seem just a little more advanced than us, to indescribable non-corporeal type of sentience.
But are there, the thing I don't understand from that quote is, are there different kinds of cadavers in eggs? Or is it like eggs always have this kind of cadaver?
You're asking a great question. My understanding is there's not a direct one-to-one correlation, but that is very, very, like, take that with a healthy dose of salt. Like, that is not an informed opinion.
No, I mean, it's interesting to think about maybe it is like a car manufacturer, and there's the egg guys and there's the crescent guys, and they all kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, totally. There have been different people who have theorized about this. So first of all, it comes down to how many different groups do you believe are contacting us, right? Like, are the grays and the tall whites and the mantids and the reptilians all like part of the same overarching galactic federation? Or are they four totally different civilizations? Right. Or are there multiple groups composed of, multiple different species, and like the grays are in three different groups with three different goals? There was one guy who was talking about there being a time travel aspect to this, and that the Nordics are a group who are very close to us in time. They're relatively close in our future, and the grays are from much further in the future after some sort of apocalyptic event that caused a lot of genetic damage. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I've also seen people talk about the idea that different UFO types are for different purposes. Like, oh, this is a scout craft and this is a whatever, right? But nobody knows. So what we've got here is David Grusch kind of hinting at exactly the question you're saying, that I believe, if I'm understanding what he's saying right, there is not a clear, obvious one-to-one correlation. Oh, yeah, the grays fly flying saucers and the Nordics fly boot heels. And, like, if it was that clear, I think he would have said something like that. He seems to be playing a much messier thing where there are kind of similarities in taxonomies of craft and similarities in taxonomy of creatures, and whether those correlate is unclear at this point.
It makes a lot of sense. And when you think about, I love Star Trek, but one of my concerns about it sometimes is that it's all so nice and orderly. Yeah, and I just don't think that's how it would work out.
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
Grusch continues talking about this idea of non-corporeal. So you remember he mentioned different alien species in that press conference that they did recently, and he dropped the term like non-corporeal plasmoids or something like that.
Yeah,
and everyone's like, what? So he says, it goes back to the orb phenomena that came out in Tranche 4, that the administration is having this issue with these luminous orbs showing up at certain sensitive test range. What is that? You could see that it's intelligently controlled. They come in groups. This isn't just ball lightning here, but it's this plasmoid type intelligence. Now, there might be a structured craft behind said plasmoid, And that plasma discharge might be an artifact of the propulsion system, possibly. But we're seeing even weird stuff like that is almost unknowable what it is, unless we have some way of studying or capturing it that I don't know about.
That's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
don't have any good reaction to that. It's just kind of, it's interesting. And it feels to me the right kind of messy to be right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Phil kind of recovers his composure and asks his next question. He says, okay, and you have seen pictures or videos or both of life forms that are piloting these craft as well. You've seen the cadavers. And Grusch says, yeah, some of the craft we've assessed are likely drones, and some of the craft that we've recovered were empty, and the pilots were not there. But yeah, some of it was piloted. And what do you know? They look just like what people have reported seeing, what we would call in pop culture speak, grays, small gray aliens, exactly the way you think. Some of them look exactly as reported by credible observers that have nothing to gain and everything to lose by discussing their experience.
So that's interesting. No cadavers from the other ones that he mentioned. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's been stories for years that... So one of the first things that people tend to say when they find out about a crash recovery program is, how do you have a species that is advanced enough to cross presumably interstellar distances, and yet they're crashing craft left, right, and center so that we can recover them? Like, how do you square that circle? And the answer seems to be that some of them, it sure feels like they were left as a gift, like parked in a field with the engine running where they knew we would find it, nobody on board. Like, it's really hard to interpret that as anything other than, here you go.
Sure.
Now, then you start having a really fascinating discussion about motivations. Is it a technological gift? Is that like, was it altruistic? Was there some sort of treaty signed? There's been rumors for years that Eisenhower or some other president signed an agreement to do technology exchange in exchange for letting them abduct some citizens. Did they literally just wander off and we just carjacked them? Like there's a lot of questions that come up when you deal with the idea that some of them were found intact, landed, doors open, unoccupied. What do you do with that?
Yeah, I like the idea of that Star Trek episode where they land on the planet and then come back and the shuttle's just not there anymore. Someone has taken it off with a crane or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, let's just transport up.
Ah, damn it. I guess we're violating the Prime Directive again.
Exactly. Just like every episode.
Fill out Form B32. I've got it on autofile at this point.
We just do it so often.
Dr. Phil asks, have any of these pilots or occupants of these craft, to your knowledge, been taken alive? Again, Dr. Phil, great question.
Yeah.
And Grusch says, yes. And I know people who have had direct interactions in a detainment situation, which sounds very Star Trek and sounds very crazy, but it's true. I talked to a former cabinet member about that who directly worked the issue for a particular former vice president. You can guess which one. Darth Vader.
Wait, which one is Darth Vader?
Dick Cheney. That was a nickname.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that sounds not surprising that it would be Dick Cheney.
Yeah. Well, and we've heard rumors for years that Dick Cheney was arguably the last, person in charge of the legacy program. And after Dick Cheney was gone, things have kind of fragmented, and that's part of why things are so chaotic right now, is there isn't one person in charge who can negotiate, I guess, for lack of a better term, with the White House about disclosure.
Yeah.
And Dr. Phil says, were they able to communicate? And Grusch says, yes. And it's true that some sort of consciousness communication, people call it telepathy. I cannot begin to tell you how it works, but there is some sort of communication like that. And even friends of mine that were on retrievals felt that kind of communication as they approached the vehicle when they were cordoning it off and waiting for transport. Now, how that works, what that means, I certainly don't know.
Yeah, man, it's going to be exciting if we ever get to study that.
Yeah. And again, echoing back to connecting witnesses and witnesses echoing each other. This was something we heard directly from Jake Barber. He flew the helicopter on a retrieval mission to retrieve an egg, and he felt an emotional connection with the egg, which he didn't really know what to make of, and kind of caused him to have a crisis.
Yeah. I think I would have a crisis too.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to read Dr. Phil's next question and then pause to allow you to react to it, because I believe you're going to have a reaction to it.
Okay.
Dr. Phil says, now I'm learning about this as I go along, and I'm told that our nearest neighboring solar system is Andromeda, and that it would take 2.5 million years traveling at the speed of light to get there. So if these visitors have traveled from the nearest solar system, it would take 2.5 million years at the speed of light, which we can't do.
Yeah, that's not the nearest solar system.
It's the nearest galaxy.
Galaxy, yeah, which is quite a bit further away. But even so, it wouldn't take that long. It might, I don't know what it looks like on the outside, but if you're going at light speed or near the speed of light, time compresses so much that I was reading something a little while ago.
This is a problem with the relative time.
Right.
It wouldn't feel to you in the craft that it takes 2.5 million years. It would take, relatively speaking, from our perspective, 2.5 million years from when they left their destination.
Yeah,
but yeah, the whole thing is muddy. Dr. Phil's real question is, how do they cross interstellar distances? Because even if his example of the nearest galaxy isn't where they're likely coming from, even with intersolar systems, you're still talking about very, very far distances. And he gets way into it with David Grusch. And David Grusch talks a little more about it. But that's an understandable question, even if he kind of like misunderstood the details.
Right, yeah. The nearest is, I think, 4 light years.
So David Grusch says, yes, the closest galaxy, I think it's M31, Andromeda, like you said. However, within our own galaxy, there's extrasolar planets around other stars. However, I do caution to ascribe this whole phenomena as merely just extraterrestrial. Sure. That's certainly a piece of the pie. That's likely what some of this is. But there's other taxonomies of anomalous intelligences. Perhaps it's ultra-terrestrial. Perhaps it grew up here and it left and it came back. There's shadow biome. There's other types of origins. There's under the sea. We don't understand 70% of our oceans. What intelligence, advanced intelligence, might have developed on the seabed? So this is a drum that Grusch has been beating since the beginning. He mentioned interdimensional in one interview, and Representative Luna latched onto that. That's her favorite word now.
Yeah.
But he's making a bigger point, which is there's lots of possibilities for where they come from that might be able to address the light speed issue. So if that is the thing that's blocking you, these are some other possibilities he's encouraging you to look up. The ultra-terrestrial idea is fascinating. That's kind of the interdimensional one. Growing up here and leaving and coming back. There's
Portland.
a thought experiment in the world of archaeology called the Silurian hypothesis, which is based on a race of intelligence dinosaurs from the Doctor Who episode. Okay. But basically, there is a point in the geological past where there is no record, but there could have been civilizations on the surface.
Sure.
It's not likely, but there absolutely could have been things that existed that have since rotated under the planet's crust. And just, there are no records. There's no fossils. It's that far back.
Right.
There's enough room in the history of our planet that it could have happened is the point of the thought experiment.
Yeah. What is shadow biome?
That's a fascinating one. Basically, it's the idea that there might be things living here on our planet in a biome that we don't interact with. Now, play with the idea that we only see a certain amount of the visual spectrum, right?
Sure.
Extend that out to some sort of life form that doesn't interact with us on any level that we are built to be able to see or perceive.
Okay.
If they were non-corporeal EM intelligences, they could ride radio waves around the planet. Like, this is completely speculation, but the point is, the idea of a shadow biome is we don't perceive all of reality.
Sure.
Now, there's some issues with this, which is we have tools that are better at perceiving other parts of reality that we don't see ourselves. But all of these ideas are kind of getting at the idea that we don't know everything. And if you're limiting yourself to saying, well, there's no way they could fly here from that far away, A, you're assuming they're bound by the same technological and physical constraints that we are, which is not necessarily a good assumption. And B, they might not be from there. They might be from here. They might be time travelers. They might be interdimensional. You know, like, there's lots of ways to square that circle. So if that's where you're getting hung up, it's best to kind of like just table that discussion and focus instead on what does it mean that we are seeing pretty compelling evidence that something is here.
Yeah. And regarding the C one, I feel like I'm going to write that one off, because if that were the case, that they were under the sea right now, we would have already been destroyed. We've done enough damage to the sea.
I see what you're saying. I thought you were going to say we would have detected them, and I was going to push back on that. But you're definitely getting into a King Namor of Atlantis situation here. I'm declaring war on the surface dwellers who are polluting the oceans.
Oh, man. Yeah, we would deserve it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the interview. Our good boy dropped some new nuggets of information. Like I said, nothing earth-shattering, nothing like
very cool,
absolutely game changer, but nice like evolutions of what we've heard. He's clearly in contact with Jake Barber and other whistleblowers. He's clearly working with Burleson behind the scenes to keep things advancing. All of this is what we expected, but it's just nice to get a little bit of confirmation that, our good boy is still fighting the good fight and still working to keep things moving forward, even if he's not as publicly visible with it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so up next, I would like to talk about, you remember a little while back, like last episode,
2 weeks.
President Trump issued an order saying that NDAs were going to be waived. And we kind of heard about this through a Fox News report, which was very weird. There was no official statement. And then Representative Burleson managed to get permission to release a memo that was like the preliminary legal guidance around this. And there are still some questions around it, but it suddenly went from being like a rumor to, oh, maybe there's some teeth to this. And what was interesting about it was it basically took something that already existed in the NDAA, which is that any whistleblower is currently cleared to go to Arrow. That absolutely, that exists. You are supposed to be able to do that regardless of your NDAs. Arrow is cleared to receive any information. However, nobody really trusts Arrow, so that didn't really achieve anything. So this new one takes what already exists and extends it to the president's new task force, Pursue. Is Pursue trustworthy? Open question. But there's reason to hope. And what was really interesting about it is it wasn't just what happened with the NDAA, where, yes, technically you can go to Arrow, but nobody really talked about that. To now, every intelligence community group is supposed to, when you go into the break room and there's like the big poster with like your rights as a worker and everything, like they're supposed to do something similar where they mandatory notify their employees about their rights to go talk to Arrow and Pursue. Now, what are the limits of this? Is still an open question. Definitely does not extend to public testimony. That's very clear. But also, as Matthew Brown quipped, permission to speak does not equal freedom from retaliation. So it's supposed to mean that. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So the whistleblowers have been in a weird spot. And like one of the big legal groups put out a paper talking about this, and it basically boiled down to, this looks promising, it looks real, it looks serious, but also this is the preliminary guidance. We're waiting for the real guidance, and we encourage any whistleblowers to do the same thing. Until we get the details, don't go. In the meantime, James Fox, who together with Leslie Kean and a few other people put on that press conference that David Grusch was talking about, has been dropping little videos here and there aimed at President Trump, encouraging him to unchain the whistleblowers. First of all, he shared a new video from Dr. Eric Davis. If you don't remember who Eric Davis is, hold on, he's about to explain himself. Dr. Eric Davis says, quote, "I am an astrophysicist and chief scientist in the U.S. defense intelligence industry. I investigated unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP, for 30 years. I've seen classified and proprietary defense intelligence industry evidence that the American public and the world have a right to see. That included photographs and documentation of retrieved craft and alien bodies. But I am prevented from publicly sharing this evidence because of the threat to my security clearances, employment, and potential for civil or criminal penalties. Mr. President, with your signature, you could waive the SF-312 NDA to protect UAP whistleblowers like myself. I respectfully request that you take swift and decisive action, as the nature of UAP should not be kept deeply classified."
I like that he includes the the number of it. Hey,
don't make the president go look up the name of the thing he has to reveal. It's this one, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was very smart. And so you said they're making videos. Are these like TikTok videos where they mention him, or
it's not TikTok? It's like a regular talking head to camera video. Okay. If you've seen any of James Fox's documentaries, they look like segments from that. They just happen to not be.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Eric Davis, if you remember, has previously spoken about alien species. He gave a famous interview with Congress where he kind of casually mentioned 4 alien races: Greys, Nordics, reptilians, and insectoids, which was fascinating. Also, in Age of Disclosure, James Fox's documentary, Eric Davis said, quote, "I am aware of at least 2 advanced non-human species, one of which made contact with the legacy crash retrieval program, the other of which bodies were recovered by the crash retrieval program in various crashes."
Do we know which 2 those were?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you can guess that one of them is the Greys.
Yeah.
But there's been rumors for years that we've recovered bodies of Greys. So that's probably the Greys.
Yeah.
The rumor has always been that it was the Nordics we had a treaty with, but that is all rumor and speculation.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, literally, as I was putting the show notes together, James Fox dropped a second one. So I'm guessing he's going to keep putting these out, which is great. But he shared a video from Immaculate Constellation whistleblower Matthew Brown, who said, quote, "From 2018 to 2025, I served as a national security contractor supporting the Department of War and the Department of State. In these roles, I was entrusted with our nation's most sensitive intelligence at every level of classification, along with operations designed to counter our adversaries' most destructive capabilities. Beginning in 2023, I provided sensitive information to Senate and House members regarding UAP, technologies of unknown origin, and non-human intelligence. I also authored the document known as the Immaculate Constellation Report, the public version of which details evidence of long-standing U.S. government awareness of these subjects. The American people and Congress have not heard the whole truth because secrecy agreements and active threats prevent me from speaking freely. Mr. President, I respectfully ask that you release me from all relevant secrecy and non-disclosure obligations and protect my family from those who wish to harm me for telling the American people the truth. We are not alone."
These are great. I like these videos.
Yeah.
They're short, super smart.
They're punchy. Yeah. It's the kind of thing you could see actually being shown to President Trump.
Yeah. Totally fits on a Fox News segment. Yeah. Very smart.
Nothing has come of that to my knowledge, but I hope James Fox keeps putting these out. Starting with Matthew Brown and Eric Davis is great.
It's a great
they
start.
were both very explosive claims. David Grusch has already spoken publicly and said in the press conference he directly spoke to the president. So I hope they keep going. I want to hear Dylan Borland. I want to hear, like everyone who's out there. I want all of them to put out these videos. Another thing that happened in the last 2 weeks, the 5th batch of UFO files dropped.
Hey, all right.
Yeah. CBS News said, quote, the bulk of Friday's release includes the type of grainy videos that have been the hallmark of past disclosures, showing flying objects captured by military sensors and cameras. 6 of the videos show different versions of the same incident, an encounter over the Gulf of Oman by Special Operations Forces on an AC-130J gunship in September 2021. These clips are cell phone videos of screens on the gunship showing objects picked up by its infrared and other sensors.
Man, there's such a OPSEC problem we've got going on right now.
Yeah, for real.
I don't know. The military must be so worried about cell phone clips, but
there was a really good Reddit thread where an anonymous Reddit user was like, why does the latest file release contain videos of screens?
Yeah.
Which is a really good question. And, there were a range of responses from it's easier to declassify a cell phone video than it is the actual,
maybe,
streamed video from the thing. Someone else was like, have you ever tried to get video off of one of these systems? It's a nightmare.
Yeah, that may be true.
CBS says, quote, an accompanying intelligence report sheds more light on the footage. The report said that the forces on board the gunship observed approximately 25 instances of UAPs while conducting a live fire exercise in the Gulf of Oman. The UAP were observed as cold orbs. Cold is worth noting because this is infrared footage. And one of the common skeptical arguments against them is that what they're actually recording are meteors or rockets or other planes. All of those read as hot in infrared. So the fact that they were cold is significant. The UAPs were observed as cold orbs flying at lower altitudes between 250 to 1300 miles per hour in different formations, as well as maneuvering aggressively. UAP also appeared to react to the aircraft firing its main cannon, the report said.
I would hope so. I would too.
I assume the cannon was not pointed at the UAP, but
is this target practice? I don't know, get the balls.
I think the main thing is, again, getting back to what David Grusch said, another common skeptical argument is these are balloons or, ball lightning or things like that. Balloons and ball lightning don't maneuver in groups they don't react to things like this. So we're not quite in 5 observables territory, but they're doing a lot to defend against skeptic statements by pointing out that they were cold, hot, that they moved in groups, they maneuvered, and they reacted to things that were happening. All of that is compelling.
One interesting number there, 1,300 miles per hour is about Mach 1. It's 1225, but it's an interesting number.
Yeah, for sure. CBS News says one noteworthy FBI report records an interview with a former military pilot about something he saw while serving in Afghanistan in 2002. What's interesting is the FBI were interviewing him about an unrelated thing. They were not an unrelated thing. It was another UAP incident. But he was talking about orbs somewhere. And then he's like, oh, by the way, do you want to hear about my other UAP encounter? And they're like, yeah, man.
Yeah, sure.
So he says, this is Afghanistan, 2002. Says at approximately 4:30 a.m. local time, the pilot noticed that the stars were getting blacked out over Bagram. It appeared as if something huge went overhead from west to east and was an equilateral triangle shape. The object was moving silently at a consistent speed and altitude, possibly 150 knots, with no lights visible, the agent wrote. The pilot estimated it was 500 feet in size, but he could not fully see the shape of the object. He reported that the pilot he was with also observed the triangle, and when it passed overhead stated, "Did you see that?"
A very reasonable thing to ask. Yeah, that's cool. 150 knots is like, knots are, I don't know, you can kind of do 1-to-1 with miles an hour. So that's not super fast, but big.
The main thing that I take away from this is black triangles are a common thing in the lore. Like, we hear about these all the time, and they tend to do this kind of like sedate maneuvering. They're not making giant crazy maneuvers. They're usually like moving steadily overhead, and they're way larger than you think they should be. Like, that something that large should not be moving that slowly.
Yeah.
When he talks about only seeing it by blocking out the stars, it is, of course, very hard to estimate how high an object like that is. But if it was low enough to be smaller than he thinks, presumably you would hear something. You would get some indication of how it was maneuvering, something like that. You might be able to see more details. In order for it to just register as blocking stars, you assume it's a certain altitude. But the higher altitude it is, the bigger the object has to be. So you've kind of got this dome here of like, it's like big and upsetting to like, oh no, it's really big too. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that in like cheap astronomy, one of the things we talk about is like arc seconds and like how many thumbnails is it across?
Right.
I wish they had given that.
Yeah, for sure. So you were not being critical of the report, but I will say the community reaction to the 5th batch of files has been fairly lackluster, ranging to upset.
Really?
Now, we've gotten hints of this over the past few batches. I think Chris Sharp put it well. Chris Sharp is the editor of Liberation Times. He says, I think we will be hitting the point where these releases will start backfiring on the government. With no context, analysis, or ways of interpreting these releases, people will lose interest. And Post-Disclosure World echoes that. He says, at what point do these UFO tranche releases serve the cover-up and confuse the public about what's been happening for the past 80 years? At what point are we all being trolled and manipulated?
I mean, 100% of the time, always. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. The reason I wasn't like annoyed is like we got video of 6 different things.
Well, I'm bringing you the best of the best. Of course. Like, if you go look at the actual release yourself, it's much more underwhelming. Like,
sure, but
when
that's
somebody
been
kind
true
of like
every time.
Pulls the highlights out, it's like, oh yeah, that is interesting. But it kind of comes back to this idea of like, okay, what they are releasing is underwhelming. The answer we've heard is they want to be releasing things on a regular cadence, but they're having difficulty getting the good stuff. So whenever they find something, they throw it out there, but the stuff they're finding isn't necessarily the cream of the crop. It's the stuff that was left unprotected and, cell phone videos of stuff. And, but there's also a more negative way to look at it, which is they are actively removing any of the contextual information from these military videos.
Possibly.
Arguably for a good reason, to protect sources and means. But those are exactly the kinds of things that we need in order to determine if we're seeing anything interesting. Continuing with the idea of people being kind of upset. First of all, I'm just including this because I'm delighted to hear from her again. My good friend Anjali is back. She says, this disclosure thing is for entertainment purposes and polling numbers to the White House. Just interject here. I seriously doubt UFO files are a polling issue for the White House, but point taken.
All right,
and a game of hide and seek for the military-industrial complex. I stand by my position that it will be whistleblowers, experiencers, and the phenomena itself that actually gives the world disclosure. And Joe Murgia kind of echoes this. He says, if I show this to my open-minded, skeptical friends, they're going to laugh me out of the room. Show me one clear and close video showing a craft making a right angle turn. Do those videos exist?
They do, and a lot of them have been like systematically debunked, whether they're true or not. Like there was that incredible video of the airplane with 3 orbs following it. And
oh my God, you're going down the MHA rabbit hole, huh?
I mean, it was a good video.
It was. Unfortunately, totally fake.
Yeah, but yeah, but I
My
agree.
favorite was when they found the exact clip art for the distortion pattern around the orb. It's like, this is just a thing.
Yeah. It was in like a default clip art library. Like, okay.
Bringing it back to kind of less angry and more critical criticism. Astrobiologist Jacob Hawk-Misra said, without further information, the Pursue sensor videos in their present form cannot fully resolve undefined cases or conclusively indicate anomalous velocities. Now, this is actually a quote from a paper that he wrote and submitted to Archive, or however you pronounce
Archive.
that. But he specifically is trying to do the thing where, can you determine how fast this object is moving just using the video? And the answer is no, you can't, because you don't have enough points of reference to tell. He's like, there were a couple where you could maybe almost do it because we can infer where it is, but even then, like, no. And to his credit, while Avi Loeb is, I love him to death, but he's very self-serving, right? He's always talking about Avi Loeb. The one thing he has been hammering on from day one is we need better data, whether that's military giving us the data they already have, or whether that's us setting up our own sensors on the roof of Harvard, whatever. Like, we ain't going to resolve this without better data.
Yeah. What are the Pursue sensor videos?
It's the stuff we've been talking about. Gun camera footage, FLIR videos, the most recent ones where there's cell phone videos of the dashboard. Like, basically what we get is this military footage, just like we've always seen, but it's all the identifying information is black barred out.
Got it.
And often it is a video of a video. So we don't have any metadata in the video that presumably exists in the original source material.
Okay, cool.
Chris Mellon comes at this from a different angle. He was on I think it was a morning show of all things, talking to the host about, the latest UFO Files releases. And she's like, how should we feel about this? He says, I've seen some of the imagery that has not been released. For example, we have satellite imagery looking down on UAP from above. And some of that is of much higher caliber than the imagery that's been released to date. So that's an example of something the public would find, I think, very informative. Yeah. People complain about these pictures because they're infrared imagery and they're fuzzy looking, and they're what fighter pilots are used to, but not what the public is used to. So we're a long way from coming clean with what the government has.
Yeah, it's a good point, though. Like, even satellite stuff is probably going to be fairly fuzzy. If we look at the GOES satellites that kind of sit over the 2 oceans around the U.S., they're incredibly detailed for hurricanes, but you want to find an individual airplane, like, it's just not, it's barely there.
So Chris Mellon has been telling this story for years, that we do have crystal clear optical. Okay. I assume optical is the right word, but not like infrared.
Infrared
photographs. Yeah, that's fair. Ignore that I said that. But crystal clear satellite photography of UAP. I assume he is referring to classified military satellites.
I'm sure.
that are, I assume, much higher quality than whatever the NOAA has for looking at hurricanes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because they're designed and they're lower orbit and they're pointable and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Lou Elizondo popped out talking about this. And he was saying, there are things we can do to increase transparency and faith and confidence by the American people. And some of that is to just have a conversation. Like, if I was ever in charge of Arrow or one of these other organizations, I want to put a pin in this for a moment and remind people that Lou is widely regarded as being under consideration for a new UAP czar role. So when he says this is not just like idle speculation. If I was president, like, he's actually in the running to be in the head of one of these organizations. Yeah. If I was ever in charge of Arrow or one of these other organizations, every single month I would have a report card on myself. I would do an hour interview. You can ask me anything you want. Here's where we are. Here's the report card of where we set out, where we were going to do. You know, we're getting an A in this area. We're getting a B in this area. We're getting a C- in this area. But here's what we're going to do to take that C- and bring it up to a B, right? Ultimately, what happens when you don't have information? You get a void. And in that void, people can throw whatever junk and garbage they want to. So to fix that, you communicate.
Yeah, I love it. I would love to see that.
Now, this is not technically related to the latest file drop, other than this is not included in the file drop. But the New York Post ran an article that said, quote, a pair of classified videos allegedly showing a 100-foot black triangular UFO over a Colorado military base remain locked away despite President Trump's new order aimed at encouraging more UFO whistleblowers to come forward, sources familiar with the footage told the Post. 2 videos, recorded on a service member's personal cell phone on consecutive nights in 2023, are among the pieces of evidence whistleblowers say still cannot be discussed or released publicly because they remain classified by the Air Force. Those videos, which captured the craft zooming over mountains and actively camouflaging in clouds, are stored with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations in Colorado, file numbers IRR 1669S015524 and IRR 1669S005024, according to those sources.
According to some people.
Oh my God.
Amazing. Yeah, that's what you got to do, apparently.
Yeah. Now, acting Pentagon Press Secretary Joel Valdez responded to this on Twitter. He said, our team at the Department of War is looking into this report. If there's anything we uncover, we will release it under Pursue, the new task force, on war.gov/UFO. And UAP whistleblower Matthew Brown responded to him and said, it doesn't get much easier than this. They have the report numbers, cognizant authority, and geographic location. Should be a quick turnaround. Let's see what Pursue can do.
Yeah, it's kind of the first test, isn't it?
Yeah. And Matthew Brown was the one who was saying the problem with Pursue is we don't know whether we can trust them yet.
Yeah.
Here's a great test case. Hey, buddy, this is the file number.
Yeah.
They won't release it.
A file?
They're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, interesting week. As usual, the UFO file drop. There's a couple nuggets of genuinely interesting stuff in it, but as usual, there's nothing that would take an unconvinced person and bring them over to, oh, there's something to this. Yeah. It's interesting at most, which is good. I'm glad, but I understand the growing frustration in the community with continuing to release these context-free military censor videos that frankly aren't adding a lot to the conversation at this point. The ones that are already there have done their job. Putting more out there is interesting in the sense that there's a volume of them, but the category as a whole is not going to materially advance the conversation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they can go back in though too and like flesh things out or and also like I'm excited to see the video of the 6 different sensors. I think there's a nugget in each one, and it's kind of cool.
I brought this to you and figured you would be on the side of like, yeah, this is nothing. Nah. And I'm like, I don't know, man, there's not much to it. And you're like, this is pretty cool to me.
I mean, that's what we've been asking for so long.
It's true. It's true.
And you're like, oh, you only got one of them.
Yeah, I try really hard not to land in there like, oh, our bi-weekly UFO file release was disappointing.
Yeah, exactly.
The last thing I want to close with tonight is if there is a running theme that we have been talking about since day one on this podcast. It is the clear perception from the outside that the Pentagon is of two minds about the topic of disclosure, and that the history of UFOs in government is a pendulum swinging back and forth between the more and less disclosure camps.
Sure.
One group will get the upper hand for a while, then the other group will come in and kind of stomp things back down. It's like, it's laughable when you go look at, like, this report was put out in 1954 that said UFOs are unquestionably real and a threat to national security. And 1955, that guy's boss put out a report that said, no, they aren't.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's just that back and forth for 80 years. And that is continuing today. Liberation Times reported, Liberation Times understands that advocates are now competing to shape what form any disclosure would take should the president decide to proceed. Sources familiar with the current effort say some private defense contractors and individuals with ties to the CIA are resisting broader disclosure.
Man, how do you get to be an individual with ties to the CIA? Like,
I think you work at the CIA.
I suppose, yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting to think that there are people who are powerful enough that they can still influence CIA stuff while not being in the CIA.
I learned something recently.
Yeah.
You read those reports and they're like, a source in the administration familiar with these matters said, right? Like, I always thought, like, that's weird, like, lawyer speak for protecting your sources. It turns out that at least in the case of the White House, often what happens is there are things that they don't want to talk about, but then the public starts talking about it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And you want to correct them, but you can't correct them on the record. This was from that Glomar podcast I mentioned a couple podcasts ago. They said one of the things the White House will do will be to hold a little presser. Well, they'll invite in various press groups, and they will give them on the record information from an anonymous source. And there's a apparently untested legal theory that as long as there's no name tied to it, nothing has been happened. Technically, no one has confirmed this. Wow. So they will literally tell the reporters, you can credit this quote to a source in the administration familiar with the matters. And like, that language is very carefully chosen by their lawyers. So when I hear, an individual with ties to the CIA, I hear someone at the CIA press office said, this is how you can credit this quote.
Yeah. Oh man, that has the sort of messy flavor that says, yeah, this is probably right.
Yeah, that's probably right. That sounds right. Representative Tim Burchett gave a quote to Ask a Poll. He said, yeah, I had a meeting at the Pentagon this week on the issue. A very high level meeting. I'm not at liberty to say who was there and what was said, but it was over 2 hours, if that tells you anything.
Nope.
The disclosure is real. The problem we're having right now is the deep state is blocking people like Stephen Miller and others from accessing this.
Yeah, it's the deep state.
I want to pause here for a second. Well, I'm not pausing. That's the end of the quote. But I roll my eyes just like you do every time Tim Burchett says the deep state. It's his favorite answer for anything he doesn't like in government. The deep state this, the deep state that. Except there literally is a deep state if we believe what we are hearing from people like David Grusch. Like the whole claim about the legacy program is an unaccountable government agency that's kind of gone wrong. That's deep state. Like, he's not wrong to use the term when describing the gatekeepers of the UAP thing. But the phrase itself is so poisoned by its current position in political discourse that I find myself rolling my eyes, even though I think it's an accurate reflection of what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. Liberation Times said, quote, 3 sources have told Liberation Times that figures within ODNI linked to the CIA are resisting efforts by the Trump administration to release more substantial information concerning UAP. Those sources identified Aaron Lucas, the principal deputy director of national intelligence, as one of the officials allegedly providing such resistance.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's again, file names, people, like this is how you do it.
I want to see more of this. I want to see them bringing the receipts. I want to see them naming names. Like, I can't tell you what's going on. And it's that guy's fault.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthart chimed up. He was addressing the most commonly asked question he gets, which is, what happened to Skywatcher? And basically, Skywatcher has been radio silent for almost a year now. And Ross was very clear that he doesn't know. But then he presented a pretty compelling story explaining what they're probably up to.
Okay.
Quote, the Department of War has quite literally taken on the running of its own covert operation to intercept these mystery objects, and I'm told they have recently downed objects, craft, both in the U.S. and across the border near Juarez in Mexico.
I'm sure that's not causing any problems.
I am also told by White House sources that President Trump has personally authorized this operation, which perhaps explains why no full admission has yet been made to the public about the full extent of what the government really knows. There is a full-on effort underway by the administration to recover suspected NHI exotic technology in a program totally separate from the so-called legacy program. This is an attempt by the president to circumvent the legacy program. It's been run out of the White House by the president's most senior intelligence advisors.
I mean, it totally makes sense. Kill the NSF and go chase UFOs.
Well, yeah. But more to the point, I heard him say, oh, yeah, the Department of War is trying to down UFOs. I'm like, yeah, they've been doing that. That's not news. Yeah. The news is President Trump is trying to down UFOs. This is not the there's DOW. A group in the DOD who's trying to do it. This is President Trump saying, well, they're not going to share their UFOs with us, so let's go shoot one down ourselves, which I have a lot of feelings about. First of all, that fucking sucks if the best path forward for the White House is to just spin up their own branch.
But it seems to be the way.
Hey, I would rather see something happen than nothing, but boy, does that suck. Also, do we have to shoot them down?
God. Seems like we don't.
It seems like we don't. I get it. There's another group that's done crash retrieval. They won't share their toys with you, so you want to get your own toys. But if this is what we think it is, that's another civilization. I get that you wouldn't be the first one to do it. But two wrongs don't make a right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Bobby shot down a UFO.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason he renamed it to the Department of War, right?
Right. Yeah. Coulthart continues. He said, I am told the Defense Department is using the same so-called dog whistle, electromechanical signaling, and psionic summoners, neuromeditative interaction, as Skywatcher's team was doing at Sierra Blanca. It also perhaps explains why, if members of Skywatcher are working with the Defense Department, why Skywatcher has gone very quiet.
Okay, so they got a new job.
That seems to be it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, disappointing for us, but...
Yeah. What's interesting is if you go back and listen to Jake Barber's initial interview, he's very clear that was the goal.
Oh, okay.
He said, we are working with the Department of Defense, and we think within a year we can answer this question. And about a year later, they went radio silent.
Mm-hmm. So they got their answer, and someone didn't want to share.
Well, I think what happened was they successfully demonstrated the technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we've heard Representative Burleson say that there was a successful summoning operation that he was told about. I think that was probably either Skywatcher or the team that Skywatcher ended up joining in the DOD. And that was the one that showed them we can actually do this. And then probably they got orders from President Trump, like, okay, green light.
Yeah, let's go do it.
Go get us a craft.
Yeah, interesting.
Podcaster Darren King kind of summarized the whole thing. He said, we're hearing words of different factions within the government trying to gain the upper hand over each other by racing to down UAP and study the recovered technology. In other words, instead of asking for briefings, newer officials are seeking first-hand access through direct interception.
We got to have a better way.
Right? Like, this is what we hear about with like, oh, us and Russia and China are all racing to down and reverse engineer craft. That's already difficult enough. And now you throw in like, oh, within the U.S. government, there are multiple factions.
16 different groups.
Plus, apparently, private industry, so you've got like the White House team, the legacy program team, the Lockheed team, like how many teams, all of a sudden these stories that Jake Barber was telling about like getting in a firefight over a crash recovery zone. I don't know if that's true, but it feels a little more plausible when you have this idea that there are multiple groups butting heads over who gets to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. So
super, super weird.
Man, weird week.
Super weird week, right? You understand why I was like, Robert Bigelow meeting with President Trump and urging him to disclose was like on the verge of being cut. I'm like, I don't really know if we need this week.
Yeah. But it is so interesting. Yeah. Man, I don't know what to make of this week. You have any conclusions?
I mean, not really. Like everything is an iterative step forward in what we've already believed, so the idea that there are factions within the government that are at loggerheads about whether or not to disclose, and if we are going to disclose, how to do it and to what degree, that's not new.
Yeah.
But it's every little bit we get makes it feel more plausible, makes it feel more likely. I find it very plausible that there are groups in disagreement. I find it very plausible that the administration of President Trump has difficulty working with others and negotiating for power behind the scenes. I find it very plausible that people are actively briefing the president and encouraging him. One thing that I've noticed more and more people saying is encouraging President Trump to think about his legacy. Talking about this idea of like, hey, presidents come and presidents go. And, like, are you going to remember, the Benghazi or the Strait of Hormuz 30, 40 years ago from now? Probably not. Are you going to remember the name of the president who disclosed the existence of non-human life? Absolutely. Like, this is a way to cement a legacy. And my understanding of President Trump is that's probably a pretty compelling argument to him.
I would imagine. He's certainly old enough to be thinking about that kind of thing. So
you might not remember, but a year or two ago, I think he had some sort of health scare, and he was talking to reporters about being worried that he was going to go to hell. Like, it was clearly like on his mind. He's like, what's next for me? Boy, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if disclosure gets you out of hell, then great.
I don't think it will.
I don't think it's
I don't think that's going to be the ticket.
Yeah,
I want you to do it. Let's be clear. There's in the 90s or aughts, they did a reboot movie of Starsky and Hutch, which, if you're not familiar, was a 70s cop show. But on Starsky and Hutch, they had an informant named Huggy Bear, who was a very fun character in the original. And in the reboot movie, was played by Snoop Dogg.
Oh my God.
Loads of fun. Really good character. But the whole thing in the movie is these two cops have very different approaches, right? One's kind of like loosey-goosey, let's get shit done, maybe, and the other's like very by the book. And Huggy Bear works with the loosey-goosey cop and does not trust the by the book cop.
Yeah, of course.
At one point, Starsky, the cop he doesn't like, rolls up in this hot rod car. And Huggy Bear's like, this is your car? Like, all right, Starsky, that puts you up a notch in my book. That puts you at notch 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
President Trump, if you disclose, that'll put you up a notch in my book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, man. All right. As usual, everybody, thank you so much for joining us on It's a Very Exciting Time. You can find show notes and more in our website, veryexcitingtime.com, as well as links to our Discord and social media accounts.
And if you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime or grab some t-shirts at veryexcitingtime.com/merch.
That's right. And Chuck, as always, my wife thanks you for listening to me talk about UFOs so she doesn't have to.